Week 17 is fast approaching us, so I'm going to go through my team for this week with an eye to future weeks. So if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you guys give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get straight into it. This team selection video is probably going to work a bit differently to what you've seen in previous weeks. I'm going to talk a lot about future weeks just because I think it makes sense with the transfers that I'm planning to make. But anyway, let's start with the easy stuff, and that is how my team is looking like for game week 17. I've got Verbruggen in goal against Sunderland. Decent clean sheet odds for Brighton this week going against Sunderland. Sunderland are probably one of the teams most affected by AFCON. They're obviously losing a lot of players, but at the same time, they are coming off a massive victory against Newcastle last week. I actually don't think this is a bad week to roll your transfers, guys, just because this week we'll get a lot of information from, let's say, how Sunderland set up without their players, how Manchester United set up, especially without Mbeumo and Ahmad and Mazraoui down the right-hand side. So this week, just gaining a bit more information on how teams set up, with players going to AFCON. Everton's another one, could be very interesting. But anyway, I'm happy having Brighton's keeper this week. Let's talk about the Arsenal boys, Timber and Hincapié. Everton away. On paper, you might say difficult fixture going at Everton. Saturday, I think it is 8 o'clock. But at the same time, I look at this fixture now and I'm looking at Everton. No Ndiaye, no Drewsbury Hall, potentially no Grealish. You're probably going to play a Tyler Dibbling and maybe a Dwight McNeil as the wing pair. Two players that don't win fouls as much as Grealish and Ndiaye. Two players who probably don't retain possession as well as those two. Everton could come under a flurry of attacks from Arsenal. So this should be a very interesting game in terms of how Everton set up, because I think it could really, really favour Arsenal. And another thing, Tyler Dibbling, Dwight McNeil, if they play, how many minutes have they had this season? Ndiaye and Grealish have pretty much played all the games. Tyler Dibbling obviously has come on some games, same thing with McNeil. But at the same time, you really, really fancy Arsenal this week against Everton. So I'm going to start both Timber and Hincapié. Virgil van Dijk against Tottenham. Tottenham are not good at home. But at the same time, you could argue Liverpool defensively are still not the best, even though I have seen slight improvements in recent weeks. I'm looking at the new setup by Arne Slot last week before Salah came on, obviously with injury. Liverpool almost went with 5 midfielders, making it a bit more harder for teams to break them down, which is something that Arne Slot has had to do. Wilson or Virgil van Dijk's DEFCON potential is there. And I said this, Virgil van Dijk's ability to attack the box is so good right now. Like, it's incredible that he hasn't scored more goals so far this season, because every single time I watch Liverpool, every single time I'm watching Van Dijk, crosses are coming in. Van Dijk's doing some incredible headers, and somehow the keepers are getting their hands onto it. I feel like Virgil van Dijk, a goal is due. And listen, Tottenham, it could be a decent fixture. We know Vicario is not brilliant at coming out for crosses, defending set pieces. I actually fancy Virgil van Dijk massively to potentially score this week. So fingers crossed he can do that. And then the last defender, Joachim Andersen against Nottingham Forest. Now this is another game week or another team where it will be interesting to see how Fulham now cope with AFCON. For example, Anderson's DEFCON partner, you could argue, Calvin Bassey, is obviously gone. Iwobi, who I keep saying is one of the most underrated players in the Premier League, is gone. He's the one that, in my eyes, that makes Fulham tick. Can play anywhere. Chukwueze, I think that's how you pronounce his name, is also gone to AFCON. So they are losing a couple players that have been in very, very good form. So how are Fulham going to cope? But at the same time, you're looking at the Nottingham Forest fixture. It's not bad. Nottingham Forest probably defensively massively improved under Sean Dyche. Going forward, you can probably argue there's still question marks. I actually don't think, by the way, this is a bad fixture for Joe Rodon, who's currently on my bench either, against Crystal Palace at home. We know Palace, some of their players, not a lot of them, played on Thursday, came on. The ones that started are obviously not going to start on the weekend. But at the same time, Crystal Palace, potentially a slightly tired. Could Leeds get a goal? For example, Leeds at Ellen Road are very, very good. They're giving a lot of teams a game in recent weeks so far. The likes of Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool. I wouldn't be surprised if Leeds get something out of this game. So Joe Rodon is not a bad option if you guys have maybe a bit of an injury crisis that you have to play him. But anyway, that's how my defense is looking at. Let's have a look at my midfield. Now my midfield, and on paper, again, looking very, very good. Let's start with Bukayo Saka. Like I said, Arsenal against Everton. Arsenal have had a full week's rest going into this game. Literally 7 days. I think they played last week at 8 o'clock on a Saturday. They're playing 8 o'clock on a Saturday this week again. Hopefully Bukayo Saka can work his magic against Everton. We know Everton, the wingers are obviously going to have being changed this week. And obviously the fullback pairing is probably the weakest part of the Everton back line. O'Brien sometimes plays right back. He's probably naturally a centre back. Mikalenko hasn't been great for Everton. This could be a brilliant week for Bukayo Saka. Minte against Sunderland. Like I said before, Sunderland missing place for AFCON. Minte probably doesn't have the goal threat, but assist threat is obviously there. And obviously, we have seen he has got some double-digit hauls so far this season. Hopefully, this sort of game, Minte can perform, because this is one of the weeks that I wanted to play Minte in. One of the weeks I brought him in. And obviously, next week he has Arsenal. After that, I think he has West Ham and Burnley. So those 3 fixtures, including this one, are the weeks that I need Minte to step up. So hopefully he can against Sunderland. And remember, Sunderland away are probably haven't been the best. At home, they're very, very difficult to beat. I don't think they've lost a game at home, but away from home, they can obviously be beaten. So hopefully Brighton can do that. Phil Foden against West Ham, I don't think I have to say anything. It's probably going to rise in price today, tomorrow, every other day until Christmas, because that's what's happening with Phil Foden right now. If you don't have him in, make sure you guys bring him in, because listen, Phil Foden against West Ham, it is a brilliant fixture. And by the way, I was just thinking this the other day. I feel like, whenever Phil Foden gets the ball on the right-hand side and opens his body up just to shoot, it just seems like he's going to go in every single time, where the chances of it going in are very, very good. I feel like he's one of the best players in the Premier League, opening up his body. You know what he's going to do, but you can never stop it. That's just so random. I just have to say it. Phil Foden, get me another double-digit haul. By the way, if he gets another double-digit haul, that would be 5 double-digit hauls in a row. Mo Salah last year, who broke the record for the most points in FPL, never got 5 double-digit hauls in a row. So if Phil Foden does it, that would be incredible. So hopefully he can. Semenyo against Burnley. I'm very, very happy owning Semenyo for this week. I know a lot of people might be using transfers to get him, but this is one of the reasons why I kept Semenyo this long. This Burnley fixture this week at home. We expect Bournemouth to win. Hopefully Semenyo can do the magic, because he has been very, very unlucky in recent weeks. Hopefully he's a big score. Anyway, let's have a look at the attack. Now the attack is pretty simple. Erling Haaland, I don't have to talk about him. If you guys are not triple captaining him and you have your triple captain available, you probably should this week. I'm going to guess again, this is probably going to be a week where Erling Haaland's ownership will be above 200%. So as frustrating as it is, I probably do want Erling Haaland to blank against West Ham. Thiago against Wolves. Now this is obviously an interesting one going into this week, because obviously Thiago didn't play midweek. I'll be honest, I do expect him to start. We know with sides, with managers, they don't really prioritize the League Cup, for example. The bread and butter is the Premier League. They get more money in the Premier League for winning the Carabao Cup. And obviously, Brentford don't really have any other strikers. We know Dango Taro, who can play it, has obviously gone to AFCON. So I think this was more about managing Thiago's minutes. We know he had a knock a couple weeks ago. I just don't think they wanted to risk it. Otherwise, if Thiago got injured midweek, they would have had no other striker for the Premier League. That's what I personally think. If you guys think any different, listen, feel free, innit? But that's just a general opinion that I got from Keith Andrews. I don't think it was that serious that he missed out. He even said it afterwards in the game, like in the press conference. Like he was touch and go for the Manchester City game. If you're touch and go, you're probably going to play on the weekend. I think he will play against Wolves. And listen, Wolves away is a good fixture. After that, if people want to take out Thiago, I have no problem with it. We know Jarrod Bowen goes into a good fixture run until around game week 27. Ekitike next week. Wolves. Leeds after that. Those are 2 strikers that if people want another striker are not bad to target. And remember, Thiago is 7.2 million now. Like, that is becoming a bit of a joke. Like, he's nearly as expensive as Jarrod Bowen. Now, of course, a lot of people would argue Thiago's getting the points. Maybe more than Bowen, which he has done so far. If people expect that to continue, fair play. But I do think that price is slightly crazy. But anyway, that's how my team is looking like. You guys can see I've got Mbeumo on my bench right now, who's obviously going to AFCON. So let me go over to Plan FPL right now, just to discuss what I'm thinking of doing, potentially this week, and obviously in future weeks. So I'm currently on Plan FPL, a completely free to use site. Listen, I'm not being sponsored. I'm just a massive, massive fan of this site. It just helps me to plan my future weeks in FPL. So listen, give it a use. Give it a use. Does that even make sense? But you guys know what I mean. If you guys like it, use it. But anyway, this is how my team is looking at for Game Week 17. I've already explained my team selection. But as you guys can see, I currently have Brian and Mbeumo on my bench, who obviously has to leave my team because he's off to AFCON. Luckily for me, according to Live FPL, Brian Mbeumo is not predicted to fall today. He's predicted to fall over the next 2 days. That could be the Saturday, that could be the Sunday. But realistically, on that Friday, he's not expected to fall, which is obviously very, very useful for me because if he falls again, I'm obviously going to lose money on him. If we're looking at fixtures, by the way, bar Aston Villa, Manchester United, and Fulham, Nottingham Forest, every single team is playing tomorrow on a Saturday. So we will gain a lot of information after the games tomorrow. That is just something to keep a note of. So there are currently, let's say, a couple plans that I'm thinking of. The main plan next week is obviously to bring in Ekitike. So Thiago will leave my team, Ekitike will come in, and I would obviously have to downgrade Brian and Mbeumo to fund that. Now, there are two options that I'm thinking. First, the first one is Tijani Reijnders. If it is Reijnders, I probably will make this move in game week 17 just so I have him for the West Ham fixture as well, and I bench Joachim Andersen. Reijnders, let's talk about Reijnders first. Reijnders against West Ham, decent fixture. Nottingham Forest in game week 18, decent fixture. His minutes should look good because obviously Doku's out, so they'll probably play Foden, Cherki, and Reijnders together. So that is just something that I do like, and it does really target the next couple of fixtures for Manchester City. If I don't go with, let's say, Reijnders, who's currently 5.2 million, I could also go with Granit Xhaka, who has Leeds at home. Xhaka this week has Leeds, Minte has Arsenal. I don't want to play Minte. Xhaka, we know, can get DEFCON. We know can get the odd assist. We know he has a great strike on him. So I don't mind having Granit Xhaka this week against Leeds. So that would be how my team is looking at for game week 18. That Xhaka spot obviously could be Reijnders. Just remember that. Game week 19 is then when I obviously want Bruno Fernandes. That week, Semenyo has Chelsea. So Semenyo would leave my team. And Hincapié, who has Aston Villa at home. Not a bad fixture, to be honest. Also could obviously keep a clean sheet. But I obviously need to fund the move to get Bruno Fernandes somehow. So Hincapié will be downgraded. On paper, that should leave me with 5.1 million right now. But listen, Bruno Fernandes, by the time of game week 19, will probably rise. So let's just say 4.6, 4.7-ish to spend on a defender. And that defender currently is Michael Keane. Michael Keane's fixtures are very, very good. That week, he has Nottingham Forest, Brentford, Wolves coming up after that. I don't mind having an Everton defender for that run. Also allows me to have Bruno Fernandes against Wolves at home, who I'd probably captain that week. I'm very, very happy. The question that a lot of people will have is, am I willing to take on Bruno Fernandes for the next 2 weeks? So answer to that question is yes. Manchester United have Aston Villa away, Villa Park, very, very difficult stadium to go to. Manchester United without Casemiro, who's a massive, massive miss. Brian Mbeumo's out. Amad Diallo's out. Mazraoui's out. How are Manchester United going to set up is obviously something that they're going to set up in a way where they probably have Ugarte next to Bruno Fernandes, and then the front three will probably be Cunha, Mount, and Sesko, Dalot, Dorgu as wingbacks. So that's a completely, let's say, different front six to what we're used to seeing. So is Manchester United's performance going to be at the same levels that we might have seen in previous weeks? The answer to that question is no. So I'm willing to take on Bruno Fernandes that week in game week 17. Yeah. Game week 18 is where it becomes a bit harder, where Manchester United have Newcastle at home on Boxing Day. Newcastle have a couple injuries defensively. We know Newcastle not the best side away from home. That big game, I'll be honest, I'll be scared not owning Bruno Fernandes. But then I would own Bruno Fernandes for game week 19 when obviously as Wolves at home in the reverse fixture, you got 18 points. So that is my current plans over the next 3-4 weeks. Game week 20, then I could downgrade Ekitike to Jarrod Bowen, who has Wolves that week, by the way, as well. So that is just what I'm thinking right now. Hopefully, I explained all that well. The plan is currently game week 17 to roll or to bring in Reijnders instead of Mbeumo and start Reijnders instead of Joachim Andersen. Game week 18 would then mean Thiago moves to Ekitike. Or if I don't go with the Reijnders move, Granit Xhaka will come in for Brian and Mbeumo. And then game week 19 will be Bruno Fernandes in for Semenyo, Hincapié down to Michael Keane. Also, just want to add regarding the Hincapié move. That also then allows me with one Arsenal slot free. And you guys know, Gabriel will be back soon. I want Gabriel. Gabriel is the best defender to own in FPL. We saw earlier on in the season, people are captaining him. So I do want, let's say, I just want an Arsenal slot free just to move to Gabriel, essentially kind of thing as well in future weeks when he's fully fit, fully match fit, and when I'm happy to bring him in, when I'm happy with his minutes. But anyway, that is my current thinking for the next 3 weeks. Hopefully, I explained everything well. If I haven't, guys, make sure, ask me any questions you have in the comments down below. Hopefully, we get a green arrow this week. Make sure you guys like this video, comment your thoughts on my team and my transfer plans, and subscribe to the channel.